Hey everybody, I'm Dave. I'm an alcoholic. I'm qualified to speak here. I've been through the steps as they're laid out in the big book. I've done that with the help of a sponsor who himself has gone through the process with the help of a sponsor. I've done it also with the help of a God of my understanding. And meetings like this, in particular this meeting, and because of you and the example that you've set and things that you've said at this meeting. This was my second AA meeting. My first one was the beginners meeting that's at 9 o'clock. I came here on a Saturday in January of 2018. I kind of snuck in. I parked like a couple of blocks away so nobody would see my car. It was a really warm January day. I tried to be as, if I could have dressed up like a building or a car, I would have done it. Came here. Just a little bit about, I've never spoken to this meeting, I've only spoken once before, but maybe to give you just a little bit of background, I started drinking, I guess when I was around junior high school. It's actually in Boy Scouts. We would steal some beers from our dads and bring them on the trip and get drunk. And after that, I just kept drinking. I used alcohol as a crutch to kind of overcome social awkwardness, to kind of be able to speak to other people in social circles. I was really not that good at that. At some point in my life, I don't know when, I think around in college, I recognized that I had kind of an issue. I don't know if it was an issue with alcohol or just an issue at all. But the great thing about alcohol is it seemed to make my problems go away. I felt good when I drank, and so I kept doing it. After a while, when I realized that I had this problem, I tried to come up with solutions for it. I'll preface it by telling you that growing up, I was really proud. I was very impressed with myself, how smart I was, and a whole bunch of other things. And ironically, I looked to other people to feed that. I was really dependent on the opinions of others, what you thought really mattered to me. If you said something nice to me, I liked you. And if you didn't, or even worse, if I perceived that you didn't, somehow I must have convinced myself that I could read people's minds, because I'm embarrassed to tell you how much of my life I spent saying, oh, this is what they're thinking right now. I have no idea what people are thinking, but that's what I did through my life. So I had this problem, and I had this pride, and I certainly did not want to admit that I was an alcoholic. I'm not sure why. Now that I've done it, it doesn't seem like such a bad thing, to tell you the truth. But I tried to come up with all these things to solve the problem that I had in my life with drinking and with self-esteem and with having to chase the opinions of others. So I was living in New York. I'd gotten fired from a job in a magazine, and I was drinking a lot and partying, and kind of apropos of today's subject, I would go to bars, try to pick up women. That was kind of what I did. So I decided that I needed to get my life in order, and I decided I would go to graduate school and kind of get something where I would have a regular, meaningful job that would meet my material requirements. And so that's what I did. I went to school at night while I worked during the day. And sure enough, while I was in school, I kind of attached myself to the biggest partiers in the school. And we would go out every Thursday night after classes and kind of rolled into one thing to another. So the long and short of it is I got myself a better job, but it didn't really solve my problems, my drinking problem and the defects that I had in my personality. So I was working, and I thought, well, you know what I need to do? I'm not in good shape. So I joined a martial arts school, and I would go to this karate school like 4 nights a week and get the living crap beaten out of me. It's only $80 a month, so it was a good deal. But once again, I was trying to solve my alcohol problem, and I was going at it in kind of an indirect way. There were some very positive things that came out of that, as it did coming out of school. I got into better health, but I was still an alcoholic. And of all the schools, this is in New York City, there had to be 1 million karate schools in New York City. I joined the one where everybody was an adult, and we would have these promotions on Saturdays, like once every 7 or 8 months, and after the promotions, we would get absolutely shit-faced. And the tradition in Japan is you never pour your own drink. You stand there holding a glass, and somebody comes over, and your glass is always full. So how much beer and alcohol I drank at those celebrations, I have no idea. But it didn't solve my problems. I have 3 kids. When my youngest was born and we couldn't fit to our apartment in Brooklyn anymore, we moved to central Massachusetts, and that's kind of how I ended up here. And of course, my problems came with me, including alcohol. So I thought, well, I'll take up guitar, because if I could play guitar, I'd keep both of my hands occupied, and I wouldn't be able to drink. And there's some truth to that. And once again, there were some very positive things from this way of addressing the alcohol problem, but so I learned how to play the guitar, but I was still an alcoholic. I would say the last thing that I tried before I came here was I went to the UMass stress reduction. There's stress reduction program, and you work on meditation. It's a really good program. But you know what? If you're an alcoholic, it does not solve the problem. So I went. These were all attempts to kind of solve a problem that I knew I had, that I was too proud to admit that I had, until that day in January when I came to this building, this church, to come to an AA program. And this is where I've been pretty much every Saturday since January of 2018. And during the pandemic, thanks to people like Jill and Denise and James, when we went onto Zoom, I was doing that every Saturday. And so that's kind of it. That's how I got here and got started. As I've heard many of you say, I came in the room and I heard things that really resonated with me, that I could really identify with. And so I jumped into the program with both feet. I was here for maybe 6 or 8 weeks. I got a sponsor and I got to work. So I think I've been kind of trying to avoid the subject of the sex inventory, but why don't I turn to that? So it's part of step 4. And the instruction for step 4 was to make a thorough inventory. So we do resentments, we do fears, and then we do the sex inventory. By the way, one of my first meetings, it may have been that meeting in January, when I came in, and I knew nothing about AA. I remember speaking to somebody in this program. She said to me that she's been sober for 18 years. And I looked at her and I said, well, why are you still coming to the meetings? To give you an idea of how little understanding I had. So one of the first meetings I had, there was a woman sitting in this seat, and she was talking about her sex conduct. And I remember sitting here thinking two things. One, I'm not sure I understand what that has to do with alcoholism. But the second thing is, I sat there and I said, there is no way in this world I would ever get up there and talk about sex. And I know what will happen. Every time I'm asked to speak, if it should ever happen again, it's going to be on this same topic. So, anyway, we're instructed to make a thorough inventory, and that's what I did. I was working with a sponsor. By this point, I had gone through the resentments and the fears, and I had I don't know, thousands of resentments. It took me like 2 years to do my 4-step on resentments. And so when it came to this, I was already feeling the sting and the shame of my conduct in the past. And I was thinking, well, it probably can't get worse than that. And little did I know what was coming. So my sponsors had me gave me instructions to follow. I'm going to just look at my notebook to go through it. The name of the person, how was I selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Whom had I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? Where had I been at fault, and what should I have done instead? In looking at the reading, I think it's really, for what it's worth, I think it's really interesting that our founders kind of set it up this way. They start with, okay, now about sex, and they have this full paragraph about sex, those who cry for sex and more sex, and who bewail the institution of marriage, and then others who think, it's the lust of our lower nature, and they go on to say they're not going to be the arbiters of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We wouldn't be human if we didn't. And then we go to the instructions. We review our conduct over the years past. If you think about it, you could actually eliminate that first paragraph. You could just sit down and say, look at the way you've treated people in the past and ask yourself those same questions, where had you been inconsiderate, selfish, dishonest, and so on. And my own sex inventory very much followed that. It's interesting to start to look at it through the lens of sex conduct, because I guess those relationships are the ones that in some ways are most important to us. They're the most intimate ones that we have. But they're also, I guess, the most telling about how we treat people, because our sex conduct typically involves another person, whatever your sexual orientation is. It doesn't matter, but you have this intimacy that you share with other people. And so what they're saying is, we're going to look at the way we treat people, but by putting the lens of sex on, we are kind of looking at a really special group of people in our life, or a very special group of relationships. At least that's how I saw it. And that's what my list tended to reveal to me. So I wrote down the women that I had relationships with, and answered those questions. As I said, at the point that I was doing this, I was feeling the sting and the shame after having done the resentments. But this kind of put a more powerful magnifying glass on my past conduct. What I took from it, I could take any one of these resentments, and almost the first thing that I put for selfish is, it was just all about me. It was all about my desires. It was all about fulfilling what I wanted. And you know, I'm not proud of any of this. I really just treated all of these women with whom I had relationships as just being there for me. Your job is to, or what I want you to do is just satisfy me. And so many of these relationships, whether they were short or, for me, a long relationship was a year, maybe a year and a half, they were typically crashes and burns at the end. And so much of it was because of the next thing, about just how dishonest I was. Again, I'm not proud of it. I was prepared to say anything, do anything, try to be charming, try to be smart, try to be nice to get what I wanted. I wasn't doing it for a good reason. I was doing it so I could satisfy what I wanted. And relationships like that, it's just a matter of time before people kind of read you, they see who you really are, and it's like, get lost, you know? What a waste. From my perspective, it was, I'm not trying to overstate this. I mean, it is what it is. But when I did this inventory, I just felt like shit because I left a real mess looking back. And when I came in here, I was in my early 60s. I'm looking at a lot of years of having treated people really, really badly. If that point needs to be emphasized, some of the descriptions of the people I have here, most of them are names, but some of them are girl at 85 Kenmare Street, woman piano class, woman English Lit, woman City Limits, woman Atlantic Avenue, Polynesian woman. Some of them, it's legitimately, I just can't remember their names, but the fact that I can't remember their names and yet had that type of intimacy with them gives you an idea of just how superficial I was and how selfish my motivations were. So the process wasn't all bad. When I did this, I was and still am in a happy marriage, and it's made me think about my relationship with my wife. I have 3 kids, 2 of them daughters. It's made me think a lot about them, my relationship with them, their relationships with their boyfriends and the people they date. I hate to tell you this, but I'll meet their boyfriends and I think to myself, I just hope they're nothing like me, you know? But so that was kind of the positive that came out of it. If it needs to be tied into alcohol, I will tell you that alcohol always played a huge part in this. We go out drinking and try and meet women or pick up women, whatever the situation was. But it was just part of everything that I did because alcohol was part of everything I did. Maybe to give you a lighter example of that, back in 1987, I was going to get engaged to my girlfriend, now my wife. It was, and her birthday is right around Labor Day, and so that was what I was aiming for, to get engaged. And I was at work, and I had a lot of responsibility in something, and we had a filing deadline on a Friday. And that week, as the week progressed, I would get less and less sleep. So Monday night, I left work at like 11 o'clock. Tuesday night, I probably left at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. That's to tell me I've been talking for 20 minutes. I'm sorry. Wednesday night later. And then Thursday night, I just pulled an all-nighter. I went to work Thursday morning, and I had to stay all night to get something done. Sure enough, the filing got done. And that night, I had told Karen, I said, we're going to go to dinner for your birthday. It's at a really nice restaurant in New York. And, I had bought an engagement ring, and I was going to surprise her and get engaged. So I left work, and then the next day, Saturday, we were going to Cape Cod for the week, and we were going to be on vacation with good friends. So I finished work at about 5 o'clock. It's almost like the story out of the book. I knew that the partners would be happy with the work that I did. I called up a dial cab, one of those black cabs, picked me up. Somehow between the time I got out of work and the time that I got in the dial cab, I must have gone to a local store, or we must have had beers in the refrigerator at work. So I grabbed like 3 of them for the ride from the office in Manhattan. At this point, I was living in Brooklyn. And we're going down 2nd Avenue, and I'm throwing the beers back with the friendly cab driver taking me. And I get to my apartment in Brooklyn, and I was completely wiped out physically, but I did myself no favors by knocking down 3 beers really quickly, way too quickly. So Karen calls me, and I said, listen, I'm tired. I'm just gonna lay down for a few minutes, but I'll be ready to go. Come on over, and we'll catch a cab over to the restaurant. We were going to the River Cafe, which I forget if it's under the Brooklyn Bridge or the Williamsburg Bridge, but it wasn't that far away. Anyway, I get off the phone, and I must have sat down in a chair. And then the next thing I know, Karen's standing in front of me. She's dressed to the nines. And she said to me, I let the phone ring 70 times. And then I came over just to see if you were alive. So we ended up not going out to dinner that night. We did get engaged. She did say yes. Our friends came to pick us up the next morning. We were driving up to Cape Cod with them. They knew we were getting engaged. They're driving up the street. They're beeping their horn. And I'm out there doing this. So, I know I really hurt Karen's feelings when I did that. And I still tell the story. She doesn't mind that I tell the story. But it's a shitty thing to do. And it's kind of typical of the stuff that went on. I'll really try and finish up right now. First thing, just before I get to the final words, I just want to say thank you to this meeting. It has meant everything to me. And as I told you, I tried a whole lot of things to deal with my drinking problem. Nothing worked. And when I came in here, I was out of solutions. And this is the only one that worked. If you're new and you're thinking about doing this work, it is great work. And if you think as I did, it's not going to work for me, you can abandon that thought. It works for everyone if you just do what's laid out here. The second thing is, and this is what I'll finish up on the sex inventory, it talks about shaping a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. I actually didn't do that with my sponsor. I didn't sit down and write one out. But I think, but I have one. It's one that I actually go to very often. I have a real problem at the end of the workday when I come home. I'm in a not necessarily good mood, and I can be short with people. I can say some snarky things. So when I'm driving home at night, I'm saying a prayer to God to, look, please just guide me so I don't say something to my wife, who's put up with a lot, that's going to hurt her feelings. My kids are grown, they're out of the house, so it's me and Karen. And what I'm actually trying to follow is something that I'm supposed to read every day. I'm sorry, Mike, but I don't. But this is what page 85 says. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. That's the arbiter of all my conduct, including my sex conduct. I'm trying throughout the day. I pray, I wouldn't say constantly, but a lot. I'm looking for God to guide me. I'm done with trying to run life the way I think is the right way to do it. That has not led to anything that's really that good. I have great confidence that good things are going to come from this. I don't know what all of them are. I'm just working at it. But that's the arbiter of my sex conduct. That's the ideal. I say those prayers. If it's God's will, I'm good with it. And if it's not, at least as I understand it, then I'm not good with it. All right. I know I've exhausted your attention, but thank you.